I will start with a rooftop in Jharkhand in 2004, where I sat with tribal women teaching them how to use community radio. For the first time, they were telling stories in their own voices. And that's when I learned true sustainability begins when people speak for themselves. My experience in Afghanistan, I learned no governance framework matters if people don't trust you. Trust is the only currency in crisis. The world doesn't need degrees anymore, and it needs people who can tell sustainability story in a way that builds trust and action.
Irshad sir, I basically went through your profile and I basically saw the wide array of experience that you have had over the course of last 22 years, starting from 2002 when you started off working in the social sector, and then slowly over a period of time you've transitioned to sustainability communications, climate risk communication, ESG communication, ESG advisory, and a lot more. Um, Without me spoiling the introduction any further, I'd like to know a little bit more about you, about your journey from your side. Um, yeah, maybe that is how we can start the conversation, and then we can take the conversation forward from there.
Thank you, Sachin, for inviting me to be part of this impactful podcast. It's a privilege indeed to engage with a platform that actively shaping the future of sustainability and ESG careers. And I appreciate the opportunity to share my experiences, as you highlighted, and some of the insights of my past experience. Uh, I understand Green Mentor empowers sustainability professionals through education, mentorship, and community building meaningful ESG impact. Uh, so about me, 20 years back in 2004, I was in the forest of Jharkhand working with the tribal women to create and operate community radio, a participatory community model, media model. And last year, I was designing communication strategies for a World Bank infrastructure project in Vietnam. So, from village uh, capacity building and training on participatory communications and learning from the tribal community
Right.
to the development boards, one truth that I've learned is sustainable change happens when people are empowered to tell their story. So, yeah. So, from training tribal women to operating community radio stations for forest protection in Jharkhand, which is an environmental issue, training of the women, of course, the gender part comes, inclusion, the social part come, and the governance, because the idea in community radio training was that the tribal women will talk about their ecological rights that they have, the forests where they were being evicted. So they were raising those issues so that the government take note of their rights. So
Very
from
interesting.
from that Jharkhand village to Vietnam climate resilient transport communication, I've learned that the authentic sustainability communication is not about perfect report that we call about sustainability report or ESG report. It's about genuine transformation that improves lives while protecting our planet. And I believe sustainability is not a department but a culture and communication that bridge us all together. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So I think this that radio stint that you did with the tribal women, I think that like interests me a lot, and maybe we can like before diving deep into ESG and sustainability communication, which is what we'll be spending a lot of time doing. I'd like to understand a little more about this engagement that you did, like with the tribal women on the radio front. Like, where was this getting broadcasted? Who was it reaching to? All of that, I would love to know a little bit
Yeah.
about that experience, and if you can take us to 2004 or early 2000s when you were doing this,
Yeah.
and tell us a few, stories of that experience that you had
Yeah.
initially.
So I was working with Charkha. Charkha Development Communication Network. I come from AJK Mass Communication Research Center, which introduced a course in the name of development communication. Earlier, we used to call it mass communication generally, but this was a specialized course where people like us were being trained to use communications to empower rural communities or to bring change, behavioral change. Now, when it comes to the working in tribal block of Jharkhand, it was a project which was funded by World Bank. It was being implemented by Charkha with a local NGO called Manthan. Mr. Pal, Sudhir Pal was the concerned person, a very well-known journalist of Jharkhand, Ranchi. And Mr. Shankar Ghosh, you may be aware about it. He was a well-known civil society person. So he was the founder of Sharkha. So this project in Jharkhand was in the forest where most of the tribe, like Santhali tribes, it's a block where Santhali tribe exists. And I was involved as a project coordinator, training the tribal women to record their own voice. And the whole program was called Pichwail Man Ke Swar, Voices of the Marginalized. Pichwail, you understand, marginalized, Man Ke Swar, the voices of the marginalized. So the idea was to identify some of the community representative from this tribe, as I said, Santhali and Orion,
Right.
and specifically women, because we were trying to empower women and create a magazine format where the women were trained to use mics and recording instruments, and then there was a 3-day workshop that we used to do in Ranchi and then go back to their villages. And this broadcast was done through All India Radio Ranchi. So the two, basically, it was done in a hybrid model. One, that the women and men will record the local folk songs or drama or similar kind of interview based things, and do a narrow casting, so that the idea was to empower the tribal community, right? And also use their voices through All India Radio, where a lot of people would listen to their unheard voice. So building the capacity of the tribal women and men, and amplifying their voices through radio, All India Radio, and narrowcasting it within that village to empower them to speak about that issue. So it's basically a development communication model that we are following. So we don't call it ESG then. It was
Of
an issue
course.
related to environment.
Right.
They were talking about forest rights, evictions, protecting the forest, helping clean the rivers, you know, all that, and forestation. On the other side, women were trained, so then gender inclusion and that part comes through social, and from the governance perspective, amplifying the voice for advocacy where it will impact the policies. Yeah, yeah. So
Very
this,
interesting.
yeah.
Very interesting. And where was it broadcasted? Like, was that region specific or any specific radio
So it
station?
was it was broadcast from the All India Radio station in Ranchi. So, but then the outreach was from, because it was from the All India Radio Ranchi. So it was all Jharkhand people who could listen to it. So it was not confined to that block, Angada block, where I was working, which is close to Hazaribagh and Ranchi border, a very remote area. But then their
Right.
voices were reaching out to Jamshedpur or Greedy, and wherever this All India Radio reaches with this
Right.
frequency. Yeah,
Very interesting. Very interesting. Then I think you also worked very extensively in health communications as well, right?
right,
With quite a few different organizations,
right.
including FHI 360 and followed by UNDP. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, and maybe like I never knew about what health communication is as of today, even though I'm working in sustainability. So maybe you can educate me and our viewers on what is health communication and what exactly were you doing with these uh, couple of organizations that you work with on these
Well, let
engagements.
me start with some of the work which I have recently done in the public health domain. and which is inclined toward the reducing the carbon footprint when it comes to the COVID telemedicine innovation project I was involved in. I was the project lead with a team of 35 doctors and 70 nurses, and basically it was a project being uh, funded by MSF OCBA, which is MSF Spain initially. MSF India was implementing it. So the project, MSF's telemedicine project across India during pandemic, with the idea was to reduce the to use uh, telemedicine where what was happening during the COVID is that people were not being able to go out. So there was some kind of medication they can do it at home. So 80% carbon footprint reduction through digital consultation. So most of the consultation were done through our doctors who will be sitting remotely, and patients will call on a helpline number. I can uh, check basically, if you were aware about a helpline number, 1800 309 4141. So
Okay.
yeah, so basically it provided a tele consultation for COVID-19 patient, a
Got it.
follow-up consultation, and information related to vaccination and mental health services. During the whole process, what you would be amazed to know that the whole initiative ensured 80% carbon footprint reduction, as I have mentioned. The social impact: expanded healthcare access using telemedicine
Right.
services, equity principle. Women, men, anybody, differently able can be, can make a phone call and, contact our doctors. People adopted that system because it solved immediate health problem using development communication problem solving approaches, not because we explained sustainability benefit. This taught me that authentic sustainability from the community benefit over institutional messaging. So that's what we were doing. Uh, so when it comes to my involvement with MSF, so before that in the health communication domain, I was working with a couple of international organizations. One, of course, was FHI 360 in Haryana, where we were training the doctors and nurses on social behavioral change communications framework. So,
Oh,
social
very
behavior change communication framework is about just not about awareness. People are aware about some of the, the benefits of vaccination, for example. But if you don't create an enabling environment for people, when the vaccination is not available, for example, when the, so enabling environment is about providing the vaccination, providing the health service providers will visit to the concerned parents. So that way, uh, health communication is about, one, of course, awareness, and two is, of course, about creating an enabling environment, and third, of course, is about advocacy, where we would empower the community, we would empower the people to demand their rights. So if there is no demand from the families who need vaccination, for example,
right.
so it will be so difficult. So health communication is encompasses awareness to behavior change to advocacy and that kind of a thing. Yeah.
Got it. Very clear. Very clear. Um, Very interesting. So, and then you went on to work with Tata Consulting Engineers Limited and then Deloitte India, like like slowly moving towards the corporates,
Yeah.
teaching them how to do their sustainability, communications a little better. Um, but yeah, I think the first question that I will ask is, say that when you're working with a corporate, how does the engagement look like? What does sustainability communication really mean? Is it only limited to how you communicate your sustainability initiatives to your stakeholders, or is it also about how you communicate internally so that you can uh, foster sustainable values within your organization?
Very
Um,
good question, Sachin. The traditional communication and sustainability communication, let me tell a little bit of difference. in the in the traditional communication is about how do we as an organization, as a government, as a corporate, as an NGO, we say how do we tell our story. On the other hand, sustainability communication is about how do we help stakeholders tell their own stories of transformation, right? So too often sustainability is treated as a branding exercise or a compliance checkbox. You know, reports pile up, campaign sounds good, but trust keeps eroding. So that's because what really matters is not how well an organization promotes its achievement, the ESG achievement, but how effectively it builds conversations that connect big goals with everyday realities. And this is where sustainability communication comes from. So, when it comes to, so there are some pillars of sustainability communications. For example, cultural intelligence over universal framework. And I can talk more about how, with examples on how cultural intelligence is more important over universal framework. Then another
Yeah,
pillar would be behavior change over awareness building. As I told you already, awareness people may have. For example, they know about climate change is happening, but when it comes to practicing those knowledge into action, there is no behavior change. And then transparency that builds rather than uh, breaks trust. So people tend to do greenwashing. You are aware, but you being in the ESG domain, you are from the
very
hardcore
much.
ESG communication. The storytelling that connects system to the soul is more important,
Right.
and rather than just the compliance textbook. Now, when I told about the universal part of it, now let me give you a couple of examples. Moving beyond the compliance trap, we talk about compliance trap to building trust resilience, right? So let me tell, I talked about transparency builds trust. There's an example from Ben and Jerry that publishes detailed social and environment audits. They openly document both progress and failures in the supply chain sustainability. So why it worked? Sharing setbacks builds credibility that flawless report can't match, right? And let me give you another example of authenticity over perfection. So uh, Patagonia's "Don't Buy the Jacket" campaign. They paradoxically advocate for mindful consumption while communicating the environment cost of their product, and it aligns corporate action with ethical values of their buyers.
Right.
And let me give you one example from India. Chipko movement. You know,
Yes.
it succeeded by amplifying local communities, enabling them to tell their own stories about forest protection and livelihood. And why it works? Because community trust peer experience more than messaging from institution or NGO or government. So that's where these figured out. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Uh,
Very.
if you want, I can talk about how localizing global ESG standards work from the cultural intelligence over universal framework perspective. Just a couple of examples. Let me talk about one example from Kenya, MCOPA. So we talk about solar energy not as an environment tool. So what they were doing in MCOPA in Kenya, they were communicating solar energy not as an environmental tool, but as a reliable, affordable power for household, right? So
Very
उनको ये
interesting.
बताने की ज़रूरत नहीं है कि एनवायरनमेंट टूल है ये सोलर उसके उसको वो अफोर्डेबल है इट्स अफोर्डेबल पीपल अडॉप्ट सस्टेनेबल बिहेवियर टू सॉल्व इमीडिएट प्रॉब्लम्स so the moment they
Right.
realize that it's reliable affordable power for household they will go they will so they went from kerosene to solar, right? In
Right, right.
one of
So
my
it needs to
yeah,
have a clear use case,
yeah,
and you don't have to, like, to different stakeholders, you have to communicate the same story but differently.
right,
Right, is what
right,
you're saying,
right.
so that it becomes more relevant for them. In this case, they were shifting to an alternative source of energy which was a lot more reliable than kerosene,
Yeah.
which they were earlier relying on. So very well understood. Very well
Yeah,
understood, sir.
and why it worked is because we were not talking about the technical benefits of solar, right? We were talking about
Right.
why it matters to them. It's affordable, right?
Right.
And the moment that affordability and reliability comes, people will start, using this.
Right. And even in ESG, we see this. So a lot of forward-looking supply chain companies or forward-looking suppliers who do not have a mandate to adopt ESG or start disclosing their sustainability performance, a lot of them do it for two reasons. Firstly, it unlocks various kinds of benefits and markets for them in the long run. Benefits like, of course, it opens doors for them for, like loans that have lower cost of capital, or it pushes them, or it makes their management or mid management think about how to drive various kinds of efficiencies which will then lead to lower cost of operation, right?
Right.
And at the same time, you're creating a lot of uh, social impact, social and environmental impact as well, right?
Very well
So
said. Very well said.
all of that goes very well, like goes together. And I yeah, it just like the example that you gave reminded me of this, that with suppliers who do not have the mandate, they do it, a lot of them do it, of course, because they are working with that big client who's asking them for their sustainability data. But a lot of them are also doing it because it will uh, put them on the right path in the long run, right? So from a profitability standpoint as well, right? So
Right.
that's what a lot of these businesses care about. Now, one thing which really interested me when you were talking about your experience, and especially about how does the communication bit looks like in organizations, and you said that how does a set of I don't know, ESG policies, or how you communicate ESG to your stakeholders translate into behavioral change within the organization.
Right.
Now, how does my organization becoming a little more, or at least on papers, um, like taking a few initiatives um, with respect to sustainability, and like how can I basically use sustainability communications as a tool to drive behavioral change? If you can talk a little bit more on that, that will be great.
So
How does
what?
it all look like how can I imagine that one organization that is investing in sustainable communications for their setup, um, how does them investing in sustainable communications for their organization over a period of time translate into behavioral change and cultural shift in their organization? So,
Let
yeah,
me give you a couple of examples to explain this.
sure.
In those early years, I was not doing ESG, but I was living its principles, and that's
Right,
where the environmental, like forest right, water access, climate resilience, social, like empowering women, ensuring participation, addressing public health, and governance is all about transparency, accountability, and giving citizens the voice. And those experiences built my foundation when frameworks like GRI or TCFD come later. Now we are talking about GRI, TCFD. I
right.
understand them not as an abstract checklist, but as a lived reality.
That's exactly why I've asked this question. I
Yeah,
want you to
yeah.
kind of paint that
So
picture.
so let me take back to my 2007 days when I was linking systems to the soul from the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. I was working as a communication officer from UNDP, embedded in the Ministry of Rural Development,
Right,
where communication focused on increasing mass awareness about the Narega scheme, that 100 days of employment, and
right,
how that 100 days of employment will ensure a reduction in migration. That there were a lot of migration happening from rural India to the urban city. How to how to restrict that and provide employment in their own village, at least 100 days guarantee employment, and the payment. So these were something which needed mass awareness, and we used behavioral change communication approach, connecting a systematic governance guarantee. For example, right to, you have a right to work, directly to every day's. So so the whole behavior change communication campaign that we were part of, and I was completely involved with the joint secretary and the concerned team in the UN, is to create a campaign where we focus on the right to 100 days. So the moment the laborers, the peasant, the people marginalized section in the village, they know this is the right. I have a right to claim 100 days of employment. So we used mass communication. So wherever this bus, and then we use mid media, for example, near the bus stand or in the panchayat building, and then interpersonal communication. We had, you know, grassroots level frontline workers who were going to village. They were traveling on foods and telling them about this 100 days of employment. So a 360-degree behavior change communication approach really works there, where where you know when you guarantee rights and people understand the benefit of being part of this whole scheme, they will start utilizing that scheme. And that's where I think Narega was, and then we know about Narega is still going on now. It was NREGA when I was working. Now it is called Mahatma Gandhi National Employment Guarantee Act, and it has ensured that there is a livelihood opportunity in the village, and people are taking the benefit of the scheme. So that is one of the behavior change framework I can talk about. Then there are many projects I have done on behavior change. If so, I can talk about Urban 95 project when I was doing it in Udaipur, where it was an urban behavior change communication project where we wanted to design the whole project was designed from the children perspective. Children should feel safe while crossing the road. So child friendly infrastructures, for example roads and health infrastructures, were being created. And so we conducted a comprehensive behavioral analysis of why people are not utilizing um, the health services, or why people are feeling unsafe to go to parks, for example. So they're not feeling safe to take the children to the park. And that's where the behavior change communication framework really comes to create an enabling environment. While I tell you example, one of the फैमिली मेंबर सेड कि हम पार्क जाना चाहते हैं, लेकिन जिस रास्ते से हम जाते हैं वहाँ पे बहुत सारे कुत्ते हैं, स्ट्रे डॉग्स, जो जिसकी वजह से हम अपने बच्चों को लेके नहीं जाते हैं। या जब हम जाते हैं तो उस पार्क में स्मैकियर्स और ड्रगिस्ट होते हैं। तो वहाँ पे सो ये सारी अंडरस्टैंड, तो बाय अंडरस्टैंडिंग द पीपल पर्सपेक्टिव, द होल डिजाइन वाज मेड दैट द स्ट्रे डॉग्स आर no, we stop stray dog on the pathways where children feel safer to go to the park, or family feels safer to go to the park. Some kind of command and control system setup was placed in the park, where the snake ears and people of that kind, antisocial element, do not go to park, and then children feel safer and to go there. So there are different behavior change models that I can talk about. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Um, so right now you are working with organizations, helping them craft their sustainability or tell their sustainability stories a little better, and you have been doing that for a long enough time. What are the two, three things that you would say that most organizations do not get about sustainability communications, and what are they doing wrong that you think that they need to definitely take care of?
I think this is a very good question. I think the greatest challenge among, and let me frame it again. So, in the sustainability communication, the biggest challenge is the compliance trap. You understand,
Yes.
yeah. And besides that, the language barrier. We communicate through data. We communicate through complex Power BI dashboards, and then we have a short-term pressures. You know, so regulatory framework in the mind, right? There's a regulatory pressure coming up, and then greenwashing or skepticism from the perspective of the communities. So integrating across silos, I think these are few critical challenge that I see in the sustainability communication domain. And so 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 we can talk about compliance. Yeah, yeah,
Got it. I see a lot of different brands, especially D2C brands, who are really, really good at communicating their sustainability initiatives. I'm not, can't really verify a lot of those initiatives because, yeah, not very sure about that. But at least they do the communications bit really well. Have you come across, like, for example, Whole Truth? There is a brand called Whole Truth. They make protein bars.
right.
And what they do is that they communicate their value proposition is the fact that they do not use any added sugars, and they use like everything they put, and they do not put any preservatives, and everything they put it right in front, like where companies or brands generally put their branding and that tagline or anything. They put their ingredients in in big bold letters right in front. So that's one very good example that I can think of a company that's at least to their end consumer communicating their sustainability value proposition really well, right? Can you think of any such brands? Do you have any brands or companies that are doing a really, really good job in communicating their sustainability really well to each of their stakeholders?
Uh, I can mention about one uh, Indonesian community forestry project where that combines traditional forest management practices with contemporary conservation science, for example, and that ensures the solution respect local language to avoid cultural part. Uh, we some of the examples that we have been referring to is the Nike and Adidas,
IKEA.
IKEA. So
Yeah.
there are corporate brands who try to be very transparent in their communications, and they follow a more community centered communications model, uh, just not a polished PR exercise or a compliance checkbox, as I mentioned. So
Right.
reports get filled, campaign get launched, at least one, but trust keeps slipping away. So these some of the good practices I've seen in this is that it's all about building this trust to avoid a stakeholder growth cynical or gap between corporate language and reality.
And Irshad, I have another question for you. So, can you share like how sustainability or ESG communication works in action for any organization? I am an organization.
Yeah.
I do my BRSI compliance. I do my I do all those compliance check boxes. I take a few initiatives as well to, like ensure that I'm eligible to work with some of the clients that I'm working with. And I have my heart at the right place, just that I want to, balance between profits while taking all these initiatives. So, how do you see my organization, working with someone like you to put my ESG communication strategy in action?
Uh, I can tell you one example from the project I was involved in, funded by World Bank in Vietnam. In Vietnam, for the World Bank BRT project, Bus Rapid Transit Project, the task was to convince motorbike loving citizens to shift to buses. In Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City you will see everywhere, you will see bikes, bikes, bikes. And that is not a climate resilient transport mechanism. So we realized environmental argument alone wouldn't work. Climate resilience, this is not going to work. Instead, we position BRT as a aspirational, modern, and convenient. As a result, what happened is the ridership exceeded projection by 25%. The lesson: the global framework needs local heart. You must connect sustainability with the cultural practice. Uh, yeah,
How does that look in an organization, like in a business setup? Say, I am a company who has thousands, 1,000 employees, and while I do meet those compliance check boxes, how can, like, what are some of the big, like, low hanging communication initiatives that I can take in order to, get my, uh, say, my employees to take a better mode of transportation, for example, use a public transport for coming to um, office, or how can I get my executives to choose that flight which is doing a little less emissions, right? So, like, how can these kind of action be driven in a business setup?
yeah. So when we stop making ESG sound like a homework, instead tell real stories of how a water initiative, a village, a inclusive hiring changed families, how renewable energy saved cost and carbon. Number matters, but without human faces, ESG feels hollow. And my advice is balance data with dignity, and both are essential. So, see, I have a report from Adani Foundation, and Adani, this is a book titled Ripples of Change: Empowering Communities with Sustainable Water Solution. I was part of this project. I wrote the whole book. So this project basically talks about you know different water footprints and impact. And what I've used is stories where people themselves are talking about the impact, the beneficiaries talking about. In this case, for example, Adani had uh, 191,000 population they were covering to, and 15 million cum water capacity. Now this has been very simplified through infographics, and you know and in this book you will see the whole approach to water conservation is being depicted through community voice. The focus on water stressed region, community centered solution, success stories. So they have project in, say, Gujarat, they have project in Andhra Pradesh, they have project in different parts of India. What is unique in this whole sustainability communication is that we we used minimum data and maximum voices of the people, how this is changing their life, how with the water conservation initiative, uh, the people of Kuch in Gujarat are happy that now they can use the water from the pond, and clean water from the pond, and they don't have to go 1 kilometer or 2 kilometer to fetch the water. And the time they save, uh, they can spend the time with children. For example, the children will not have to travel a long distance, because and then they spend in their education. So simplifying this concept rather than talking about data too much is this is something this I can talk about. So I believe this whole sustainability communication is about connecting promises to the people, right? The planet won't be saved by number of reports we publish, but by the action we take, right? Circular economy, we talk about how through our action we can contribute to circular economy, how through wastewater management we can transform, how can ensure water availability for our citizens. And I and I live by the idea that authentic communication rooted in respect, culture, and truth is the foundation of lasting impact. Yeah.
Very interesting. So, as somebody who is aspiring to work in the communication space and is looking for a niche, and they discover this podcast and they realize that, okay, I want to be a sustainability communications expert, or like I want to basically have my expertise in sustainability communications. What is, say, looking at the realities of today, you started 20 23 years back, and now you have so many different platforms, there is social media, there is so many things have changed, right?
Yeah.
So how would you recommend them, like what path would you recommend to them? What are the initial um, steps that they can take in order to move in that direction of becoming a sustainability communications person?
So if you are a student, a young professional, or even someone looking to transition into sustainability, here is a truth. The world doesn't need degrees anymore, and it needs people who can tell sustainability story in a way that builds trust and action. And that's where you come in. We have entered into the era. We have entered into an era where skills overpower degrees. Your degree might open the door. We all have degrees, of graduation, post graduation, and professional degree. So these degrees, open the door. But at the end of the day, it's your ability to solve real problems from day one, that decides whether you will stay in the room or not. And if you know what, and you know what, the movie Three Idiot got this exactly right. Rancho did not chase grades, he solved problem that mattered. And that's the mindset every young sustainability commuter needs to have today. Now, here is something most people misunderstand. A sustainability communicator is not just a PR person with green messaging, and they are definitely not someone NGO campaigner posting on social media. A sustainability communicator is a translator. A translate you translate between business risk and climate science. Sachin, the best sustainability communications are not megaphones. They are bridges. You take climate science and ESG jargon and turn them into stories people believe or people trust and act on. So basically, you help a village elder understand how forest protection can help their future children. You help CEO of a company explain why sustainability creates stakeholder value. Investors are interested in those kind of reports, and you help teenager how their career choices connect to planetary vision of sustainable development goals or net zero target.
One thing that you like highlighted repeatedly is telling actual impact that is being created by the initiatives that your organization or your client is taking
Yeah,
to the different stakeholders that they work with.
yeah.
Um, Now, to tell those stories, do you think having worked closely on ground like you have for a long period of time, and you were living and breathing the principles of ESG, which came much later, uh, do you think that will make your sustainability like communications portfolio a lot more rich, and will it impact the richness of the stories you tell, um of the clients that you work with?
For example, I've talked about my experience from a World Bank project in Jharkhand. I talked about Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. I talk about COVID program, which is a public health. I talked about smart cities mission that I was be part of. Combining interactive data with narrative highlighting community or business impact is something using video or infographic. It has not changed. What has changed is the the appetite of the community. Now you cannot greenwash things. People have the access to information through AI platforms, through different machine learning things. So yeah, you have to be updated. You have to use evidence-based approach. And from my experiences, I would say when most of the programs that I was part of, it was already aligning with Millennium Development Goal, then Sustainability Development Goal, and now we call it ESG. So those who understand the SDG language, those who understand the MDG language, they have to simply align their language with the modern current frameworks of GRI or SASB or CFA, and a little bit of certification will really help. And I highly recommend people who get trying to get into this career is to go through some of the certifications. You have one from IM Bangalore. Reliance is doing it. And there are BSI for example, British Service Intellect. So there are different certification courses that one can do and these credentials should align with your speciality to enhance both technical and communication skills. Yeah.
Awesome. So, on that note, I think I will wrap today's session, but I have one last question actually. So, one last question and then we'll wrap it up. Um, so, like, can you recommend me and everyone else who's listening to today's session a couple of pieces of fantastic sustainability communication that left you in awe and you were like, okay, what an amazing piece of communication done by, say, an organization, a corporate, or yeah. So maybe like one thing that one I can remember, one that really grabbed my attention was Apple's they made a series of YouTube videos wherein they talked about their net zero goals and how they will be becoming carbon neutral by 2030, all of that, right? So um, can you just recommend a couple of pieces of sustainability communications that really blew your mind?
Sachin, when we talk about sustainability communications, you raised a very important point. So when we talk about sustainability communication today, it's just not about glossy brochures, PDF document anymore. Basically, it's about how you report what you do. Think of a simple Power BI dashboard, an interactive web page, or even a coffee table book, for instance. The idea is don't just disclose, engage. That's the key thing. And you know what? The most effective sustainability campaign have one thing in common. They don't treat it as a side project or just a marketing slogan. They make it part of their core business strategy. They build trust through transparency. They are consistent about it. Let me give you one example from a corporate example. You may have heard about Unilever uh, sustainable living plan. The way they sourced raw material, reduced plastics, and marketed Dove and Lifebuoy actually changed the way the communication. People could see the difference in everyday product. You know, that's a classical example of storytelling. Another example I can talk about is Nike's Move to Zero campaign. So this campaign uh, aimed at zero carbon and zero waste across design and supply chains. So what Nike did is they did not show boring carbon charts. They connected climate goals to sports and athletes. Because if playgrounds are not safe, the future of sport is at risk. And that's the story we feel. And it was reinforced by visible change, like shoes made from recycled material. And here is the truth. The sustainability communication, people don't just read what you write or hear what you say. They see what difference you are making in the society. So we don't need more sustainability reports. We need sustainability recipient. Uh, yeah, and one more. I just because we are wrapping up on crisis and resilience. We have floods, we have COVID, we have tsunami, we have wars. My experience in Afghanistan, I learned no governance framework matters if people don't trust you. Trust is the only currency in crisis. you know it takes
Very,
20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. And ESG communication is exactly that. One false claim and trust collapses. you know uh,
very
on,
interesting.
on, on, on the culture of change. In Vietnam, telling people to give their motorcycle for buses was like asking Lucknow wala to stop eating kebab, or Delhi wala to stop drinking, taking tea, chai nahi piyo. No,
Right,
sustainability has to respect the culture first. Otherwise it will
right,
fail. Satya Nadella said, I must. Empathy makes you better innovator. In ESG too, if you don't empathize with local culture, your innovation will stay on paper. Yeah.
very interesting.
Let
Very
me
interesting.
let me have some closing punch uh, for this podcast. My experience from MDG to SDG to ESG, acronyms have changed, but the real question is still the same. क्या इंसान की जिंदगी बेहतर हुई है? If not, then all our frameworks are empty. Leaders won't be remembered for the target they set; they will be remembered for the actions they allowed
Take,
to flow through. And
right.
to conclude from my side, as Ratan Tata said, I don't believe in taking right decisions. I take decisions and make them right. And that's what ESG leadership is all about.
Very, very interesting, sir. So it was a very insightful session for me, and you are actually, and this is quite sad, me being working in the ESG space, you are actually among the first few sustainability communications people that I'm really talking to, and this opens so many new doors in my head, and I'm surely going to go back to my team and ask about what are they doing for telling better stories for the clients that we work with. So on that note, I think we can conclude the today's podcast. It was a wonderful, wonderful session talking to you, diving deep into your rich experience of living the principles of ESG, as you said, and then now working with organizations to help them communicate their sustainability initiatives and stories a little better to their stakeholders, which really drives the needle in the right direction.
Thank you,
So,
Sachin. I encourage all the listeners to explore off- offering of Grain Mentor, especially
thank you
if
so
you
much.
are starting or advancing a journey in sustainability and ESG. The Green Mentor comprehensive courses, the mentorship programs, and vibrant network provide invaluable support to build the skills and the confidence needed in the evolving field. And thank you, Green Mentor. Thank you, Sachin, for this platform. And I look forward to seeing more leaders emerge from inspiring community that you have formed. Thank you so much indeed.
Sounds good. It was wonderful having you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.